Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bowles.
Thank you, Mr. Farfalia. What we'd like to do tonight is to present our information about our referendum, which will be on December 8th. And the title that we've given it is Structured for Success. My name is Dan Bowles. I'm the superintendent of schools. Here with me is Don Keegan. He's my associate superintendent for business. And Matt Irwin is our director of facilities and management. So the district, one of the things that we need to do is we need to take care of our assets. And our assets are our buildings and the things that we need to maintain for the entire district. Like your vehicle or your home, if you don't do regular maintenance on it, things kind of get worn down. So we want to make sure that the assets that we use for our children and the community uses our buildings are well maintained over time. And we've titled it Structured for Success. One of the things that we're required to do, the state comes in every 5 years and does a facility study. And they go over building conditions and basically see a punch list of what needs to be worked on in all the buildings throughout the district. Over time, there are buildings that we've hit with renovations. And in the past, we would do it one building at a time and just renovate that one building and do that. But that takes 3 to 5 years sometimes. And we have 11 buildings. So we have buildings that have not had any renovation or any real upkeep or maintenance in probably at least 20 to 25 years. And those are some of the buildings that we're going to be looking to target with this facilities referendum. Some of the buildings that came from the building condition survey as priorities are CNS High School, Lakeshore Road Elementary, Cicero Elementary, and some minor tweaks at Smith Road. And that's under Proposition 1. Proposition 2 is talking about construction of a community pool at CNS High School. And we'll talk more about that as we go through. And then the third proposition will be regarding a capital reserve fund. So at CNS High School, some of the renovations that were indicated as a priority was the HVAC systems that need some critical work done. Now, the high school did have some renovations back in around 2000, 2001, where they've changed some things with lunchrooms and things, but they never touched the HVAC systems. And so there's some real big issues there. There are things for safety with PA systems, fire alarm systems, and electrical panels that really need some serious upgrade. Other things, the minor roofing, but the gym, locker rooms, and auditorium renovations are needed to address safety concerns. And we'll go into detail about the safety of those, some of the things in those areas. And there is some repaving of the roads and things like that up at the high school. At Lakeshore and Cicero, looking at doing some renovations. In the renovations, there are portions that are still from the 50s and 60s in those buildings. And looking, when we do some renovations, looking at half the building at a time. And the reason doing half the building at a time is we get maximum amount of state aid when you do things with every 5 years at a building. So you can get about 80% state aid on doing some of these buildings and then waiting another 5 years to do the rest of the buildings. And the reason we're saying sometimes maybe doing half, trying to look at what we can feasibly do at any given time without causing a major disruption. So both what we're looking at is trying to do something similar to what we've done at Bear Road and Smith Road. And if people in the community get a chance to look at either one of those buildings, they're absolutely spectacular right now. And Smith Road had one of the more recent renovations, and the PTO has raised the local share to cover the playground. And we need to do upgrades on the PA and fire alarm. So one of the things that we're looking to do, and I was talking about it earlier, in the past, we would focus on one building and one building only and do all that work. The concepts now look to do many projects across the district. So you're not just focusing on one. So Lakeshore Road, for example, has not been touched since the mid-90s. So it's over 20 years of very little to none as far as maintenance. And we don't want to do that because then it's really big as far as the projects. So that's why you're seeing multiple buildings that we're looking to do some renovation to make sure we're taking care of our assets. So the total of this project is looking at 64.95 million. But then if you look, it says will not increase local taxes for Proposition 1. And this will be for our residents. And I'm going to let Mr. Keegan go into more detail about that piece. Don?
Good evening. So the reason that there's no tax increase associated with the $65 million worth of work is that, as Dan said, our architects and our financial advisors, fiscal advisors, have worked with us to maximize the state aid. And so by maximizing the state aid, there's less that the local taxpayer has to pay. That's the first reason. The second reason is that we have built up some fund balance, and we're going to use $4 million worth of our fund balance and $3 million worth of our debt service fund to offset some local share. And then the final reason is that we look at, many people have a home mortgage. Well, if you think about it, we've got all these buildings. We have lots of home mortgages. So we look at our debt service schedule, all the debts that we have to pay, and we have some debt that is finishing up. It's dropping off the schedule. And so that money becomes available. So those three reasons are the reasons we're able to do such a big project with no local tax impact.
So the next few slides kind of share a little bit about some of the things that we're going to be addressing in the buildings. These photos are from the high school. The photo on the left is actually the inside of the fresh air intake ductwork. Now, in this particular location, in order to access the crawl space and other pieces of equipment, you have to go through this piece of ductwork. That's why there's grating on the floor inside the duct. Not the best design. You can see the condition of some of the piping, the leaks that we have. The old Victaulic system that was the heating system in the building in the 90s was actually repurposed for the chilled water. So that's actually 50-year-old piping in the building that we're going to be looking to replace as well. So we're looking at new piping throughout the basement levels where all the equipment is located for both hot water and chilled water. We're looking at new ductwork, and we're looking at revamping the entire configuration of the system. Right now, banks of spaces are served by the same zone control. So you might get 3 or 4 classrooms on a given zone in the system. When we're done, we'll have individual room control and much better comfort levels throughout the building. So that's the high school. The next slide, Don. So the gymnasium. I know everybody here is familiar with the bleacher system at our gym. It's outdated. The floor system has reached the end of its life cycle. We cannot refinish the floor anymore. It's now too thin to refinish. So that needs to be done as well. And this will address some ADA concerns that we have as well for those folks with disabilities that might need wheelchair access or just, have a little trouble navigating the current bleacher system. It'll have secure railings that don't fall out from underneath you as you're working your way up through. So really it's a facelift to the gymnasium, some new equipment throughout it. But really those are the two major issues that we want to address there. Next slide shows some space over at Cicero Elementary, the cafeteria, very dated. Really these Cicero and Lakeshore both date back to the late 50s. Neither building has ever had a full renovation. They've had small additions and small project work done. But what we're looking at is similar to Bear Road, where we're going to do gut renovations on these buildings, go right back to steel and concrete and restore them as new complete buildings over the course of time. So this phase 1 will be half of each building. Those halves will be based on the mechanical needs of the building to make sure we keep it functional. And then several years from now, we'll come back after the maximum cost allowance from the state resets, so that we can take advantage of a full allotment of state aid again to help offset some of the costs for these renovations. Okay. Again, this is Lakeshore Elementary. You'll see in the top right corner, that's old asbestos containing tile, which is not a hazard. It's not disturbed. It's perfectly safe. But at the same time, it's something we want to get out of our buildings and we want to modernize. You see the old chalkboard versus a whiteboard or a digital display, which you'll see at Bear Road. Auditorium space, again, this is more of a facelift than a structural change to the space. We're not going to be expanding the auditorium in any way, but similar to the junior high, where we have these programs in place, we want to make sure that the kids have access to continuing that educational capability. Right now, our systems at the high school lag behind the junior high. We want to make sure that they're at least equal to, so that we can continue their education and make sure that they move forward.
One of the things with the auditorium space, we just had a major production that took place at the high school that got a lot of PR on the news. The production was outstanding. And what we're trying to do is make sure that not only the classroom space, but the spaces that our children perform in are up to snuff and meet the level that they are at. We have students that are absolutely outstanding. And we're trying to make sure that educational environment, whether it be the classroom, the auditorium where they're performing and being successful, or whether it be the gymnasium, are equally up to that standard. Here's
Okay.
some of the other facilities. Go ahead.
So as part of the gym renovations, we are going to be addressing the existing locker rooms. And we will be taking a look at the physical space around the weight equipment. And as we explored Proposition 2 with the pool, we are looking at a community pool with separate locker rooms, separate entrances, so that will truly be accessible to the community and not just that's not just a statement that's being made. It's going to be a fact. This is an example of some of the renovations at ESM. This is a new classroom space, and I know Don has some comments about this space he wants to share as well.
One of the things that we're looking at is trying to have flexible seating, flexible spaces. In this day and age, we look at working collaboratively with our students and working in groups. So if you can see, all the tables are on wheels. You can quickly take a table that seats 2 and merge that with another table, so you can have a group of 4. Often today, we have one-to-one technology, so a student has a Chromebook or a laptop. In our current setup, the high school and junior high specifically have what they call tablet armchairs. And so for those of you that remember, it's not a great working space if you have a laptop or any other things, and just sitting in a tablet armchair is very difficult in this day and age. So we're trying to make sure we're meeting the needs of students of what they'll do when they're at the workplace, because oftentimes in different work areas, you'll work with other people on a project or things, and you might have a table that may have USB or some of these other things, but we want to make it flexible so you can do a variety of different things within the classroom. So right now, we have a men's and women's swimming team that really is one of the outstanding programs in the area. And we are the largest suburb district in the county, and we do not have a pool for our students to swim in. Oftentimes, coaches, I got involved this past year, are jockeying for space to try to have their students practice and or compete. During this time of COVID, it was very interesting because a lot of people were shutting down their locations, and the team almost didn't have a place where they could practice in order to compete. Syracuse City did open their doors to us at the very ninth hour last January, and we were able to have the students have an opportunity to compete. And we've sent some students to state competition with diving, and I believe it's been almost 30 years that they've been looking to try to have an opportunity to have a pool come up for a vote. One of the things that Al Sturpey has secured a $2 million grant towards a new pool project. So that would also be very advantageous and helpful. And then the district has available district fund balance to support the construction as well. So that project, which is Proposition 2, would total 16.95 million, will increase taxes by about $1.50 per month per $100,000 home. And I'm going to have Mr. Keegan go into more detail about the financial portion.
So as Dan mentioned, we were very fortunate that Al Sturby was able to secure the $2 million grant. We're going to use $2 million worth of fund balance. And we're going to try to build the pool for just under $17 million. And it'll result in about just shy of a 1% tax increase. So there is a tax increase associated with it, but we've done a lot to minimize the impact of it. You'll see when you get to the proposition, what's interesting about this, and this is a very commonly done in school propositions, is that Proposition 2 for the pool cannot pass unless Proposition 1 passes. And you might say, why is that? Well, it would be a little embarrassing for the community if we had elementary schools that were falling down and we had a brand new pool being built. So the thought process is, if we can get support for Proposition 1, if people are willing to do that, then they'll count, the vote will count for Proposition 2, and that'll have a chance of passing. So that's the pool facility and proposition. There's an example of an indoor pool. The facility that we're talking about hasn't been designed yet, and it's worth us mentioning that. We're not allowed to spend money to do all this design work until the voters approve it. So you'll see when we talk about the timeline that if we're successful next week in getting the voters to support the project, we'll immediately authorize our architects to go forward with the design. And over the next year, we'll have a lot more information to share with the community about the specifics of what the pool might look like. The third proposition is the capital reserve. And I want to just take a minute to be very clear about how the capital reserve will work. The district has used this strategy before, and other districts have as well. All we're asking the voters to approve is allowing us to accumulate up to $30 million over a 15-year period. And we're not guaranteeing that we're going to have the $30 million. There's no additional tax levy associated with it. We're not going to go and levy money to put in this reserve. But every year when we close our books, there's usually some money left over that would otherwise roll to fund balance. So what the board will have an opportunity to do after our auditors complete their audit, the board will sit down and they'll evaluate whether they want to maybe put some of this money into the fund, into this capital reserve fund. And the interesting thing for the taxpayers is that if they vote for this proposition and approve it, they're basically creating a piggy bank that the board can then put money into, but no money can be taken out of it without voter approval. So when at the time in which we would have another capital project that we'd want to try to use that money, there'd be a proposition asking the voters to approve the use of that money. So it's just a great capability to put money aside. And what it does is when we do that next proposition, perhaps we'll be able to replicate what we've done here, which is to have no impact on the larger piece of work, or at least a minimal impact, because these funds will offset local share. So there's the first proposition. This is exactly what the voters are going to see when they fill out their ballot. And it explains that the $64.95 million project, and it shows we're asking them, can we use $3 million for the debt service fund and $4 million for the fund balance, and can we finance the project? Proposition 2, the first sentence there, if Proposition 1 is approved, then will you authorize us to build a pool? And Proposition 3, the $30 million reserve over a $15 million or over 15-year period. And as I said, here's the timeline. The interesting thing, as Matt kind of pointed out, how needy the HVAC system is at the high school. it's our intention, if the voters approve that, we'll jump right on that and get the design work completed and submitted to SED so that we can start with the high school HVAC. The rest of the work is going to take time to design. And so we probably will not start the rest of the work until the summer of 23 at the earliest. So it's a long ways out. But there's a lot of work to do the design properly, because part of our design process is not only working with the architects and engineers, but working with our teachers, working with our principals, working with all the users of these facilities and getting that input. And so again, right after the votes, if it's approved, we'll start assembling those different groups of people and try to get their input so that we can begin the design process. You want to just finish up here?
So the vote is on December 8th. The polls will be open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. The polling places, if you live north of Route 481, will be Cicero Elementary. If you live south of 481, it'll be right here in the district office. And again, they'll be open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. So that's what we're titling Structured for Success. But at this time, we want to just have an open dialogue and take any questions so that we can make sure that you have as much information as you need. Are there any questions that are out there?
Now they have, it doesn't seem a very advantageous to do it in December. Because I wanted to pass and it just seems kind of, the pool's not going to make it, I don't think. Not to be a negative Nelly here, but why'd you pick December versus getting this together in October?
But it took a while to just get all the information together, just to get ready for a referendum. Believe it or not, I mean, just to go through that building condition survey, prioritize the work, have conversations with our board and key members of management, and then to work with our architects to get cost estimates and our construction manager. So that process just takes time. And we also, you probably know, we have to give 45 days notice before there's a vote, and all the board has to approve those things. And so it just takes time.
Timing's everything, that's all.
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
Just so you guys know, this is being broadcast, and that's why we want you to talk in the microphone. It's not that we don't think you can hear us.
Yes, name is Dave Cashmer. I'm a retired school bus driver for the district. Hi, Mr. Bowles. I did take students to swimming meets and field trips. And I want to tell you, the swimming pool is very exciting for me because the students are going to get, I think children need to learn how to swim for one thing, and the community be a big plus for the community. Also, my question is, will it be an Olympic sized pool?
What we're trying to do is Olympic-sized pool has a lot of other bells and whistles. We want to make it functional for our needs for our men and women's team, as well as diving. So right now, you can make a pool, you can construct a pool, but if it doesn't meet all of the needs so that you could have proper competition. So we were just at Nottingham recently, and they have a pool that many people use, but we've had some state qualifying divers. So in order to have a program that incorporates diving, as well as what you would need to not only have things for your kids, but to also host, because the quality of our program is pretty high. And so as you've seen in other sports, we're very attractive for either state competition or hosting. So we want to be able to provide, just like the auditorium, just like the gymnasiums, we want a quality facility that will not only meet the needs of a high quality program, but also attract other people to the area and for state competition.
Yeah, so we're thinking 8 lanes of 25 meters with a deep end that could have probably 2 1-meter boards that would allow for diving competition, but all one pool. That's kind of what we're thinking right now conceptually. It'd be cool to have an Olympic sized pool, but the price tag, I think would go up a bit.
In terms, I've been to the Liverpool pool. Is that comparable to what? It's been a long time.
Yeah, the Liverpool pool, I think just recently got redone, but we've got an expert in the audience, so let's.
So I've worked on pools for over 30 years. I am the district swimming coach. And when an Olympic pool is about 20,000 square feet of surface area, just the water. Liverpool's surface area is about 5,000 square feet. So basically what we're looking at doing is something similar to Liverpool, but 2 extra lanes. Because the 8 lanes really gives you an opportunity to host some really nice competitions, bring groups in, which will affect the local economy. And to go 2 extra lanes is really probably not even a nickel more in the tax rate to do that. It's very inexpensive. to
Yeah,
build
our
2 lanes.
architect said you're going to be digging the hole. You might as well dig
Exactly.
it for 2
It's
more
like,
lanes.
you always wish you built a 2 or 3 car garage instead of the 1 for that little bit more.
Yeah.
So an Olympic sized pool is massive. This wouldn't be an Olympic sized pool. This would be in line with the pools that are built throughout New York State at high schools. So basically Liverpool plus 2 lanes.
Thank you.
Don, you sent me the answer, some of the answers I
Yep.
wanted.
Yeah,
You mentioned the Baldwinsville and Fayetteville use their YMCA.
yeah, you
Is
might.
that accurate?
Yes. So one thing that's happened here in central New York is a lot of communities, Skinny Atlas, Fayetteville, Baldwinsville, they've ended up with these really beautiful YMCA facilities. And here we've got Wetzel Road in our district, but it's small. It doesn't have diving capacity and doesn't really have any water time that's even available. So for us, because they've just got so much programming. We're a large community. So some of these districts I mentioned have both a school pool and a Y facility. And we kind of don't have either. And we're the biggest community.
Who has both?
So Beeville has a Y and they have a pool. The FM has a Y. The Liverpool has they have private water as well as they have their own pool. So they've kind of got both. We just think this community should have one good aquatics facility.
Yes, I agree. And I'm shocked that it's still not here. So what about West Jenny?
West Jenny has their own pool. Now the West Jenny community, I'm not sure what their YMCA situation is, but I know they have at least their school pool.
And then ESM?
ESM, I thought they had a pool, but Brad, you'd said that you. Okay.
And how about Jamesville DeWitt?
Well, JD takes it. They have a pool, right? But they also take advantage of the Y out in Fayetteville.
No, they take advantage of the Y, like, the kids are like always.
Well, some of the
swimming.
Community programs,
Yeah,
like
okay.
swim
Oh,
lessons,
okay.
WSI,
They're swimming
senior,
all the
some of the
time.
things we'd like to see in this pool are things like someone running swimming lessons, someone running water safety instruction for
Yes.
lifeguards. There's a shortage of lifeguards everywhere. Senior aerobics and all kinds of
Yes.
neat activities.
Because the paper made a list of the enrollment. It was dealing with COVID, but JV or JD only has 2,500 kids, which is like a fraction of the 8,000 that are in
Yeah.
CNS. So it's just, I really hope it goes through. It's just, it's more than enough time to
Yeah, it's been a long
do
time.
this. Too long.
Any other comments or questions? We can't tell you how to vote, but we can tell you to come out and vote. And so please, if you can talk it up with your friends and neighbors and encourage them to at least exercise their democratic right to come out and vote. We'd appreciate that.
Again, thank you for coming out. We really appreciate your time. And again, come out and vote.